The most precious gift we can give someone is our full attention. Paraphrasing there.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing happens until, Ian, if you and I are butting heads, boy, I need to start tuning into you. So you don't feel like you're just talking to a wall. And so that's necessary. It may not be sufficient for resolving conflict. And honestly, a lot of adult children, just to use that example, say mom is dying, she's on a respirator or something like that, and all this kinds of disagreement about what to do in terms of her care if she doesn't have clear end of life instructions. So conflict resolution often in the best case is ending with not a win-win, but a mostly okay and a mostly okay on the other side. Mm-hmm. But to say that this can be resolved, it's not always the case.
Sure.
But I don't think you can get anywhere without careful listening.
Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast, a production of Helping the Herd. Helping the Herd is committed to empowering individuals to liberate themselves from the patterns that keep them from creating their ideal life. If you like this podcast, visit helpingtheherd.com to find resources and personalized coaching to empower you to be your best self.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for meeting. It's great to see you two together. How are you doing?
It's a good day.
It is a beautiful day. Glad to be here. Glad to meet you, Doug. Derrick, how are you this morning?
Fantastic. Been looking forward to this for a while, and we're coming off Memorial Day weekend, had a lot of time in the garden, a lot of time with the cats, with Courtney. It's been really good. Yeah, you guys do anything special for the weekend?
Oh yeah, I'm having a journey on Friday.
Wow.
With medicines.
For the upcoming weekend. Exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking of upcoming weekends, I'm facilitating a conflict workshop at a yoga retreat on Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow, cool.
So that'll be fun.
Fantastic. And they're lucky to have you. And good journeys to you, Doug. Oh,
Thank you.
journeys.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I've been really looking forward to this. So as our listeners, they'll know Ian from listening to us for quite a few episodes now. But Doug, first time on. And Doug, as you know, you're very special to me. You've been a mentor, a guide, and a friend in a lot of difficult areas. And I first connected to you through the work you do with the Living Dying Project, helping people with end-of-life issues, passing on, caregiving, and just supporting people in some of the difficult parts of both living and dying in this human experience. Please, I'd like to pass it over to you to introduce yourself and other things you'd like to say, but just a huge thanks for being on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks so much, Derrick and Ian. It's a pleasure to meet you. And full disclosure, Ian has to jump on my middle name, so I feel a special connection there. Derrick, our beginning was magical as you were embarking on a long marathon of caregiving for your mother over many, many months. And during that time, me supporting you as a volunteer with the Living Dying Project, and you putting all of yourself into your mother's care and really your other family members over that prolonged period. So I would think it was a fast track to a lot of intimacy. Mm-hmm. And so this is my pleasure during my retirement to have a very active role with the project and volunteering with clients and also matching volunteers with clients, leading support groups of various kinds. And Ian, I want to say you said two magic words a moment ago, conflict resolution and yoga. I teach a few yoga classes a week myself. And a big part of my background is training and practice in conflict resolution, facilitation, and the like. So
sweet.
It's obvious that we have a lot of overlap here. And I guess the last thing I would say is I'm have a meditation practice since my teen years, and it informs much of my daily life.
That's right. And you want to let the listeners know where you're tuning in from, since all of us
Yes.
are in different time zones.
I am in Mill Valley, California, which is in Marin County, north of 2 towns up from the Golden Gate Bridge.
Nice. I hope to be visiting one day soon.
I hope you will.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, well, I'd love to start with just Living Dying Project and what drew you to this work. It's living, sure, but dying, a lot of people not as keen on. And so I wonder how you found yourself helping support people through such difficult times.
Yes, there's always been an intrigue on my part with dying, and since a fairly young age. But I would be quick to say that I don't really consider myself to be a morbid person, but I think the maintaining an awareness of your mortality is really one of the more life-enhancing things. If you walk around not assuming that tomorrow will be just like today, that opens up a lot of possibilities for today, and can actually lend a greater appreciation to. You're not just grinding through life, but you may be more available to the miracle of living. And so, yes, encountering people as in whether through illness themselves or with grieving the loss, or caregiving as you did for so long, that just opens up a whole world of connection, intimacy, sensitivity, and to not walk around just assuming you're immortal. And you're right, most people would rather avoid death. And so again, but the orientation of the Living Dying Project is living fully with the awareness of mortality.
That's right. You do a fantastic job of bringing that acceptance in whenever you were working with me as a mentor and a support there, or just into your everyday life in the other work you do, facilitating conversations with Living Dying Project. And you just bring a real awareness and acceptance to any situation you're in, as far as I've seen you. I mean, I'm sure you're a human as well. But that acceptance, I just can't tell you how much of I felt like our meetings whenever I was going through caregiving for my mom were this breath of air, whenever sometimes things just feel so contracted or dark. And to have someone who can just sit with these things, with the difficulty, with the suffering, with the pain, with the grief, with the loss, and with the joy, with the triumph, whenever you have a success, whenever you have a great connection, that openness to all of it, which I'm sure is somewhat informed by your meditation practice and then somewhat through that other slew of life experiences. But it's really such a gift, yeah. And I wanted to share a little bit about the connection I see between the work here with helping the herd and so many of the skills I've learned with Ian, and that Ian's really helped open my eyes to, and a lot of the perspective you've shown me too, Doug. During the 22 months of hospice with my mom, 22 months. It started in June 2022, and that was just hospice. That was even, after a slew of cancer treatments and some other things. But starting there, it was a fascinating experience in how to try to communicate with your family, to deal with very difficult circumstances and maintain relationships that suddenly became, like you're saying, Doug, a lot more poignant, a lot more powerful, a lot less taken for granted. Truly, you never know if you have another day with anyone, right? Really. But whenever someone's on hospice, it's just turned up to 11. It's just like, all right, you don't know if you have another minute with this person sometimes. And it just changes the whole dial. And that's something that while Ian and I often focus on romantic relationships in our talking, we're always very, clear to point out that these skills are for every kind of relationship, whether that's a work relationship, a familial relationship, which I think is at the end of life can become so important, or anything you got. We're all relational creatures, and so the overlap between this work, just keeping your heart open, being vulnerable, and being able to truly connect to people when the dial's turned up, has just been a real gift. And Doug, you really showed a lot of guidance, a lot of love, and a lot of support during really difficult times. And it's just always been an inspiration. And in your curiosity is just always really been an inspiration for me in helping me to navigate any relationship. So I just want to share a lot of gratitude there.
Sure. And as you almost certainly understand, anybody doing this kind of work is richly rewarded. It's not just putting it out there. There's so much joy in receiving that experience and connecting that way. So we have, with the Living Dying Project, 140 trained volunteers. And nobody comes to this work unless they have some qualities of an open heart, the capacities to simply show up for someone else, but, going through this, whatever kind of challenge. And the rewards returning are so abundant. I just wanted to pick up on one thing that you mentioned, your other family members. And when you're dealing with someone who's ill or grieving, for example, they will so often encounter family dynamics where not everyone is on the same page. Not everyone is prepared to meet the circumstance in the same way, especially the adult children of someone who's dying. That can be a ripe ground for a conflict, and then there's no easy way out of that one. So, and maybe both of you have had that experience where you're just not looking at things the same way among the family members. So,
yeah, thanks for getting that. I was about to ask you specifically, how does conflict resolution, like what role does that play in the role of living and dying, like in that process? Yeah. And so thanks for, quite literally taking the question out of my mouth and queuing it up. So what's your approach? How do you apply your tools for conflict resolution? How do you support those that are in that situation of, well, I think this should happen, or maybe this person is still, maybe fearing or trying to avoid or not accept the fact that we are where we are and this is what's happening. And, there is a difference of opinions or how do you navigate that? How do you support people through that type of conflict? I'm very interested to hear your approach, especially because it feels like stakes are very high when, literally life is on the line. Not that maybe their decisions are going to change anything. Maybe it does. But since there is life in the balance, conflict might feel a little bit more serious than, oh, well, you said you were going to do the dishes and you didn't. You know what I mean? Like it could be maybe a little bit higher stakes or feel a little bit higher stakes. And so I'm very curious to your approach with that, and how do you support people through that type of conflict?
Wow. Well, I'm noticing then that your name line there, helping the herd. How about helping people feel heard in those charged situations? And my confession at the moment is that much of my life I've been a pretty mediocre listener. And so it begins with listening. And as Thich Nhat Hanh says, the most precious gift we can give someone is our full attention. Paraphrasing there. So nothing happens until, Ian, if you and I are butting heads, boy, I need to start tuning into you so you don't feel like you're just talking to a wall. And so that's necessary. It may not be sufficient for resolving conflict. And honestly, a lot of adult children, just to use that example, say mom is dying, she's on a respirator or something like that, and all this kinds of disagreement about what to do in terms of her care if she doesn't have clear end-of-life instructions. So conflict resolution often in the best case is ending with not a win-win, but a mostly okay and a mostly okay on the other side. But to say that this can be resolved, it's not always the case.
Sure.
But I don't think you can get anywhere without careful listening. And again, I take delight in the practice of listening. My wife can tell you I'm making intermittent progress.
That seems fair. One of my favorite quotes about enlightenment is, if someone starts to think they're enlightened, have them ask their partner what they think.
That's exactly
something
exactly.
I'm paraphrasing there.
Yeah, right. Why are so many of these guys monks anyway? They don't have that reference point.
Yeah, I like what you were
That's right.
saying about really hearing the person through conflict, and like you noticed the emphasis on the HEARD, heard, in the name of this organization. One of the main, I mean, really the foundation of this work is making sure people feel heard. That's our main goal, our main focus in all aspects of the work that we do. And it just reminded me of our reflection script when we're helping people to listen more effectively. We teach them this form of reflecting where they say, what I heard you say is this, not you said this or you feel this way, but what I heard you say is this.
Yeah.
And then at the end, do you feel heard? Because then they get the opportunity to correct it or,
Yes.
really confirm that is what they meant and that is what they wanted to feel heard in. Or they wanted you to understand. And so I love that that's an overlap here, something similar that you're also doing in this capacity is making sure that both sides that maybe have different opinions hear each other. And yeah, it's just so powerful. And really, like you said, you can't do much without that. If person A is not hearing person B is not going to be available to hear person A. It's just not going to, like, you've got to hear each other. Both people need to feel heard. So I love that that's an aspect of the work that you do.
There's a cute little cartoon I saw years ago. Pigs talking to a duck, and the pig says oink, and the duck says quack. The pig says oink. The duck says quack. The pig says oink. Duck says oink. Now we're talking.
Speaking my language.
Yeah, I like
Speaking
that.
my language. That's what it can feel like. And especially, you keep mentioning the adult children. One thing that's coming to mind there is generational differences. That's something I've read about and tried to learn about and implement in the workplace. Let's say, you have a boss that's, 30 years, 40 years older than you. There's going to be communication that sometimes I'm going to be oinking when they're quacking without even recognizing it a lot of the time. So I bet that's something that you might encounter even more so in the work you do. And I'm not sure, Doug, actually, how much, whenever you're working with someone going through dying or caregiving, how much you're actually meeting with multiple people, like at the same time, or actually getting to sit with the whole family, and how much, like for me, it was more, coaching me from the sidelines. We didn't always have the whole family there, though that would have been helpful, but you were helping me navigate grandparents, mom, cousins, these different things that go in. Yeah, what can you say about that difficulty with either listening and being heard or communicating so that you are heard across the lifespan? Maybe, again, especially in this crucible of death where everything's just turned up to 11.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say at my age, 68, it feels so important to engage with younger people as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And one thing I'm really committed to is to not grumbling about change. I don't have to like the change. And then, of course, there are all these these generational references. I mean, I really can't stand listening to Frank Sinatra, but that was the music, or big band. That was the music of an era prior to mine. My music tastes were formed in the 70s and 80s. My gosh, am I a fossil? Although the Beatles still rock. So I think just tuning into those generational differences and the references and so forth. I'm always coming across new things that are new to me, but familiar to a lot of other people. I don't feel like I have a clean answer to your question, but it really goes back to good listening, and to really just being open. There's a guy named Charlie White who this journalist ran across this old guy washing a car in the driveway, wiry old dude, and just struck up a conversation. Guy was Charlie. He was 102 years old. And then the author, whose name I forget, but the book is called The Book of Charlie. And got to know Charlie, and what was the secret to this guy's vigor? And the bottom line was Charlie was just going to embrace change. He had been through a lot. I mean, he was a practicing physician before the era of antibiotics, and of course before World War II, and he lived to be 109. But I've taken Charlie as a good, excellent role model for. Look, I'm kind of like mildly freaked out about what artificial intelligence is going to bring about, but it's here. And
Right.
I'm not going to try to hold back the tidal wave, right? So that's just one example among many.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
heard you.
that's not a. Yeah, go ahead. That's
No,
just
yeah,
wasn't
no,
a
that's great.
truthful
No,
answer.
it's perfect. Your answers have been great. Stick with it. They're coming in very clear. What I heard you saying something about embracing change, and what I heard through that is non-attachment. Non-attachment to something being a certain way, or turning out a certain outcome. So my question that came to me there was, what is your practice for non-attachment, and how did you develop that practice? How did you get there?
One pebble at a time. Really,
Good
I mean,
answer.
just look at the massive number of global changes that are underway. There's a really cool word for it. It's called the polycrisis, and
Okay.
it could include pandemics, a nuclear threat, climate change, political disruption, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so to constantly return to an awareness of impermanence, you're just right on it, Ian. And shoot, I'm aware that I kind of have an attachment to the United States remaining united. But there's basically a guarantee that all these things will come to their end, and the way they come about, that come to their end, is not assured to be pleasant, right? We don't have to like it. You don't have to like it. Or how about an aging body? And you guys probably have been through injury. Ian, I believe you're a veteran. You've probably seen your more than your share of physical assault and
Yes,
what
sir.
that does to you. Yeah, I believe it. I try to tune into that. I'm a Peace Corps veteran, so I took my body blows mostly from infections and food poisoning. Yeah, we don't have to welcome these things, but recognizing them. You're going right at the heart of a spiritual practice. That alone, observing the impermanence of the breath cycle, and no one breath is identical to a prior or subsequent one. It can get down so granular, and then it can get totally global. And then every so often, I like to step back, zoom way out, and say, okay, all empires end. The sun will expand to such a degree that the earth turns into a cinder 4 or 5 billion years hence. So again, that's just some quick reflections on a huge topic.
Yeah.
So how did you get to where you are? Can you speak a little bit to your journey of non-attachment? Like, because I'm sure you didn't start out that way. I imagine you were young and very
Yeah.
attached to certain aspects of your life being the way that they are, and a
Yeah,
future that you really wanted to have. So how did you? Because I hope, and I'm confident that there are people listening to this who don't have that part figured out, who aren't clearly non-attached and safe and secure with the fact that the things are going to change, and they can't do much about that. It's going to change. And so I'm maybe hoping to give them kind of maybe a place to start. Where did you start? Like, how did you get to this place where you are now? How did you find this path of non-attachment?
I would say having one thing after another ripped out of my clenched fist.
Okay, say more.
Right. And so, okay, what takes more effort, this or this?
Yeah,
And until you get to that relaxation and surrender, then you can go ahead, hang on, it's fine. And have your shoulders hiked up around your ears. Or my favorite, let's grind our teeth. I love to
Yeah.
collect tension in my jaw. That's my
Same.
personal favorite. Good. All right, enjoy those teeth for as long as they last, right? So yeah, I do not want to convey any sense about having arrived anywhere.
Sure.
Right? And then we can just get down to here's a big one, what is the self? Who is this happening to? I had a kind of an insight just a week or so ago in meditation. For all my irritability and reactivity, there's a key part of that. This is happening to me. And I don't know, it just hit me like a sandbag. What if I drop the last two words?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's just happening? Then that at least allows a sense of sitting back and relaxing. And it's so funny, after all these decades of meditation, there's an aspect of it that's so simple and not at all easy, which is just to relax. When I'm teaching a yoga class, we begin and end with relaxation, absence of effort, allowing things to be. Now, is there a place for engagement and action and response? Absolutely. I mean, that is a source of a lot of joy in my life, engaging in that way. Whether it's through some of my local activism. I live in an area that gets regularly flooded and increasingly so over time. How are we going to adapt to sea level rise? Very concrete, very political, of course. Mm-hmm. And even here in Blue Marin County. And then engaging with people through the Living Dying Project. We've all appeared on this earth, so we have an opportunity to serve. So, yeah,
it's beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I love the point about relaxation, because I'm chronically tight individual. Got the shoulders, the jaw, you name it. And one thing I always get frustrated at, if that's a massage or physical therapy, something therapeutic, and they're like, just relax. No, relax that. And I'm like, you gonna tell me how? It's not that easy, man.
Just like that.
How often do people tell you that, but they don't tell you how? And I think that's one of those lessons of time. I don't know if you have a shortcut to it, Doug. You feel free to share if you do.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I don't know. Even the very experience of contraction can have the nature of sort of solidifying the self, for one thing. And but even in the course of, say, 45 minutes of meditation, wow, I'm tensing up my lower back or something like that. And so often, again, with such simple aspects to this, how about the breath? And when I'm opening a yoga class, for example, I will often encourage people to allow the out breath to release completely. I think in this culture and in these times, a lot of us are kind of holding our breath. What's going to happen next? Oh my God. Is anxiety and depression rampant in this society? Is that a rhetorical question? So I don't mean to make light of any of this. I've already confessed my reactivity and my habit of irritation. It's like, okay, it's my practice. It's my what's before me, and so I'm trying to be honest about what we're all facing at just in the human experience.
Yeah, and one thing I don't want you to maybe skip over. You're giving some great philosophical and intellectual ways of looking at things, and like Ian was asking, how do you get to those, even a glimpse of non-attachment, a glimpse of relaxation? But I don't want you to skate over that it took a lot of practice. Could you speak at all to your experience on like meditation retreat, which I think is something that's very maybe non-standard for maybe a lot of people, and also I think what speaks to how you got to wherever you are, even if you haven't arrived anywhere yet.
Yeah. Well, it's also worth saying the joy is being on the path, not in arriving at a destination. So in the course of a meditation retreat, for example, say at least a week, typically the first 3 days will be cleaning out the basement of all this sort of chatter and tension and relaxation and jaw, shoulder, what have you. And it can be remarkable after just a few days of real continuous practice without a lot of, putting down all digital devices and so forth, and no entertainment, and just being with yourself. Some magic can happen. Can happen. And I think it can sound a little dark, but people, I think, need to experience the suffering that comes about from attachment. Now, I'm attached to my relationships, and when they leave or die, there's grief there. And I don't want to pathologize grieving. I think it's a natural part of life, and I think this taps into some of the topics we discussed bringing up earlier. So just knowing that pain of the clenched fist, of hanging on, ruminating, or, oh my goodness, how many of us have had that experience of just simmering resentment. And then maybe over time, you can see, wow, as the saying goes, resentment is like, holding on to resentment is like drinking the poison and waiting for the other person to die. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to experience what it's like. And in meditation too, it's a great challenge just to be with oneself, sitting quietly alone. There's a famous experiment where people were invited into a room. You may have heard of this. And for 15 minutes, they have to sit and be with themselves and their thoughts, even as part of the instruction in the experiment. And they are given the option of self-administering electrical shocks. It's just that option. And a large majority of people choose to shock themselves unpleasantly rather than simply be with their minds. So that just speaks to the challenge of meditation.
And the avoidance, the avoidance of what is and what is there, and the things that they're maybe not wanting to face.
Right. And what disturbs me, for example, about just cultivating a metaverse is just another highly developed way of escape. I love reading some cheesy, entertaining novels. Derrick and I trade notes on shows to watch. It's not like I'm sitting, in sort of splendid meditation all the time. I'm not that person.
In the cave in the Himalayas.
Yeah. Cold and hard. Yeah. Nettle soup. Yuck.
Sure.
So no. I think there's in modern times we can call a nice meditation retreat the upper middle path.
The upper middle. Yeah, no, I'm not trying to toot your horn or paint you as a guru or anything, but you've spent a lot of time on retreat, extended retreat, and I just wanted to call light to that, because it's easy to, like he was saying, it's easy to not know where to start if you're clenched, if you're contracted, and so some of the, the view shifts and is everything about me? That's an interesting thing to notice, and that. But I think it's just also, it's mainly a reminder for me as well, a good reminder to get on the cushion. Just that, it takes continued practice. It takes putting yourself in those situations where you have some solitude or some discomfort and not choosing either the easy way out of the TV show or the harder easy way out of an electrical shock, whatever, gets you out of your head. But like I said, clearing out the basement. And I just love that about you, that you're willing to put in the work with meditation retreat, with medicine journeys, with these different things to help polish that mirror, clear the system. And I think that's one of the reasons you are able to show up so fully for others. And just highlighting that even though we can get there intellectually, sort of, one thing I try to do is only get there intellectually. I can think my way into the state. But then it's like, nope, sometimes you also have to sit and not think for 45 minutes. How daunting to allow anything to actually change.
Yeah. Well, the mind is, as they say, is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. And so in a meditation retreat too, it's likely to happen. You can have just splendid experiences. Bliss, calm, non-thought, sense of no self. And then in the very next sitting or the next moment, you can be down in the emotional gutter rolling around in pain. And that's what so many retreats have been like for me, especially longer ones. So I don't want to paint it as being anything other than the full spectrum of life. Some people who aren't familiar with meditation will say, "Oh, you're going on a retreat. That must be so blissful and relaxing." It's like, oh yeah, the sort of cartoon image of the blissed out yogi. Well, yeah, sometimes. Take it if you can get it. But as Ian has already commented, yeah, that's an impermanent situation also. And I would say I'm a very slow student on that one. I can still get captured by special experiences and then say, oh, that's it, I've arrived. This is the way it's going to be.
Yep.
Not so.
Not so. That's the way it is. Well, thank you for that. And I love that connection you made about relationships in grief.
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier, and it is striking to me. I think partially because of what, I don't know, whatever's happened in the culture to where we don't seem to have a clear, mechanism for grief, or clear rituals or practices that help us with grief. Maybe doing a certain religion or faith, but maybe, other people in your community don't have the same faith or the same tradition or the same practice. And so I feel like we get segmented, and grieving becomes this odd thing. And it's often this capital G grief whenever we talk about death. But like you're pointing out, the end of a relationship, a friendship, a romantic relationship, or if someone actually does pass away and that relationship ends, kind of the same thing, isn't it? I'm curious how you see that interaction and how your work with, let's call it capital G grief, if we will, around death and loss has, found its way into your relationship with impermanence and loss at all the relational levels.
Yeah. Well, grieving is something that I think we can probably agree. Grieving is not something this culture does so well. Back in my day, it was called the Pepsi generation, which is youthful, vigorous, pretty people dancing around, having a great time. And if you are not part of that progress, fun, in that modality, you're kind of a downer, and who wants to be around someone like that? And from my perspective, though, I think grieving is something that's really helpful to touch in on a regular enough basis. And what it does is to allow grieving just opens the door, the joy even. So all these things are transient, and I would say, again, I've been a little late to the grieving party, but I've learned how to, in a sense, welcome it. I just woke up a little sad yesterday morning, and the first reaction was something is wrong. And then I said, oh, I'm just kind of sad right now. And for me, that just has a way of opening up the stage, and then grief can move right on through. And I think this is from an indigenous source, but is a simple question. Have you grieved today? Maybe you're sorry because you're feeling a little sad because your iWatch is being funky. Or maybe your dog died. Or anything between. And believe me, the loss of a pet is a big deal. I totally respect how powerfully that affects people. And then, of course, more complex and deeper is the loss of a human relationship. So, yeah, and that's what more powerful expression of impermanence is there than that?
That's right. And it allows you to, like you said earlier, it just allows you to live more fully if you accept the impermanence. I think so often, to protect ourselves, to continue functioning, we don't accept the impermanence. We don't grieve, whether that's anticipatory grieving or grieving whenever there is a loss. We just have to got to keep going, got to keep clocking in, got to keep doing this. The laundry needs done. Not going to open up today. And have I grieved today? And I think you're pointing to one of the big things that's just switched for me is this acceptance that if I live like that, I'm not just sheltering myself from the dark. I'm sheltering myself from the light. One of my favorite quotes, it was from an article you sent me, Doug. Thanks for that share. Was a beautiful quote that the work of the mature adult is to hold their grief in one hand and their gratitude in the other. and to be stretched large by them.
Wow.
To be stretched large. It opens me up every time. And that's how I really feel about this. You mentioned this other parallel, meditation. Sometimes people call it preparation for death. And it's, sure, and if so, it's also preparation for life. We can join the Pepsi party, if you will, and also the funeral party at the same time. I think that's the work of the mature adult. I really do. The work of a mature human.
Yeah. And if you'll notice, people like the Dalai Lama or Desmond Tutu or other luminaries, in a moment, they can go from tears to laughter. It's such a beautiful way of being. And I personally wish I had better access to tears, because I learned how to bottle it up like most boys. By the age of 10, I was cutting that out. But before then, I would turn on the waterworks pretty readily. And that was not encouraged. And I doubt it was for anybody, especially boys. And so, if I may, I'd like to cultivate that availability of tears in my remaining time, because it just opens the door to joy. And just to say that when I'm working with people who are in a grieving process, in so many cases they feel like they're doing it wrong. They shouldn't be feeling this way. It should be moving on faster. Nobody can relate to them, particularly if they're the primary person. Derrick, you were probably, maybe along with your grandparents, on the front line of grieving your mom Heather's death. And other people may have been sorry or gone to the memorial service, but they move on. And then the primary griever is kind of alone. And so I just hope that in time we can learn how to support grieving people and going through just what they need to, for however long it takes.
That's right. Ian, it looked like you had a question earlier.
I do, yeah, but it's not related to this. Mine's it's a little bit further back. So it's actually something I'd sent to Derrick last week, and I still haven't heard back from him on it. So maybe this is an opportunity to get his thoughts while I get yours. So I've been reading this book, which is beautiful. It's very old. I like buying very old books. Little thing about me, I like buying books that were written like early. If it's 1910 is kind of like my benchmark, and anything past that I don't really want to read those books. I like reading older books. There's something about it that there's deep wisdom in those books. Anyway, so I found this book on it's called Tibetan Yoga and Secret Doctrines, and it's
W.Y. Evans Wentz.
Yes, it is. You're familiar.
No way.
Love that. Absolutely.
Why
Great.
does that not surprise me?
Yeah, what a great book. So I'm not all the way through it, but I'm about 2/3 of the way through. And there's a section in here called the second of the extraordinary practices, which is the yoga of non-meditation. And what it talks about is how basically, like, there is no line between, like, there's no direct, clear line between samsara and nirvana. There's no direct line between the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. There's no direct line between joy and grief. Like, there's no clear, like, separation between the two, which is ultimately, like, speaking to the non-duality of things. Like, all is one. There really isn't a difference between them. They are all part of the whole, and they're necessary. And anyway, so in that, in the idea, they talk about nirvana being a state of mind, not a place that you're going to go to in this finality. Like, I made it, I'm here now, I'm in nirvana. It's something that you can cultivate here now in your mind. And if you have achieved that state of mind, then there isn't a need to meditate, because meditation is a path to that state of mind. Right. And so as two very strong meditators that we have on this podcast here, I wanted to get your perspective on that, your perspective on what is, in your opinion, the purpose of meditation. Is it to reach that state of mind, or is there more to it for you? And do you believe that you can reach this state of nirvana through this path, this second extraordinary practice, the yoga of non-meditation? Because Derrick was talking earlier about like, well, I'm just going to use my mind. I'm gonna get there, and I believe it is possible. For me, I feel like that's my path. I'm very in here, and I can conceptualize and zoom out and view myself away from myself, view that this is happening to Ian, not to me, right? And kind of have this perspective, this broader perspective. And if you can reach that without meditation, then what is the purpose of meditation to each of you? So yeah, I would love to hear both of your thoughts on the purpose of meditation in its relation to reaching the state of mind that is nirvana.
Interesting.
Derrick, you got it first, so take it away.
I don't want to follow Doug. You got a few years on me there, so I'll get my drivel out of the way first. No, I've been thinking about this since you asked last week, Ian, because it's such a good question. What's the purpose of meditation? You get asked that a good amount, and you hear all kinds of different things. So that's where I'd start, is that I do think there's not one purpose, and it's totally fine for people to use meditation as a tool for what they're working on. You can get to right now the mindfulness thing, and how a lot of people get to mindfulness in this culture at this point in time, better sleep, less stress, more productivity. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it is effective for those things. Is that the purpose of meditation? Is that why you're reading a book from 1910 or before, about that? I don't think they were probably trying to get better sleep and be more productive then. Maybe they were. Maybe they were. In 2,500 years ago, maybe not. Maybe that wasn't the goal. But it's fine. One thing, a step that I go to a lot, and where I think my path kind of is non-attachment, which we already talked about before. I'm trying to cultivate non-attachment so that I can live a better life. That's a little bit where I'm at right now for my path. And if I were to zoom out further, I might have some more grand goals, but that's where it feels like comfortable for me to sit right now. And then you go a little further down the path, and I know some people who, they're in it for enlightenment. They want to be enlightened. They're not sure what that means. I'm not sure what that means. But they're looking for capital E enlightenment. And that's what they're going for. And I know others, and I think, Doug, you've studied this, I know others use meditation truly as preparation for death, in the idea that the death is a transition, a bardo stage that will, a bardo series of stages that will go on, and you want to have a mind that's well prepared to do that, and either get to some different experience of the afterlife, to reincarnate differently. There's all kinds of conceptions around these different purposes. For me, I'm sticking with non-attachment for now, and just to live a better life. I found how, for me, meditation helps in every single area of my life to create a little space between reaction and response, allow me to respond more than react. And I've just noticed how that's changed my relationship to myself, to the people around me, to my environment, in a way that seems to be good, capital G, good for me, for my life path. So my answer is going to be non-attachment, and that there is not one right way to do it, and that everyone's goal can be or should be different. And the final thing I'll say about the non-meditation versus meditation thing is I really like that. I think it gets so blurry, and we can get so pigeonholed into, meditation just when you're on the cushion and your back's all straight, and that's meditation. Maybe. But as you go down more of a path of mindfulness, I do think you start to see the lines blur, and it can really, I really like this non-meditation thing, because one way I think about it is you set up an experience, and you, like you said, you get there with the thinking mind, maybe you prepare something physically, but the goal can be to flow. Maybe setting up a yoga studio, let's use an example like that. You get all the mats in the right place, and you make sure everyone's there, and they all show up, and the AC's right, and it's not too hot, not too cold. You can do all the planning and stuff to set up, but then the goal is to kind of let go of all that and to flow and to do whatever the practice, whatever the work you're there to do is. And I think I can so easily get stuck in the doing part, and the doing and the doing and the doing, that it's easy to forget that we do to find often a place where you let go and things flow. Flow is the best word I can think for it, but maybe that's when the real meditation begins. Or maybe that's when you stop meditating, and that's the non-meditation that we're talking about. But just like you're saying, it's a blurry line where you start to see that there wasn't really a difference between one or the other. And I think that can only come from lots and lots of practice, no matter how hard you try to spin it around with your words.
And when I hear you say flow, all I can visualize is water, which has no opinion about the stone in the middle of the creek or the tree that's fallen over it. It's going to continue on its path and not have feelings about what is in the path. It's just going to flow around it and move in the way that it's going to move. And so, yeah, I love that visualization.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, gents, I think we're going to have to go into serious overtime here because there are 8 at least wonderful directions we could take this. And
Let's
Derrick,
take them all.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. One is one possibility direction here is that first of all, even Buddhists within a specific lineage, just to take that tradition, don't even agree on what enlightenment is. People talk about it a lot. And it's understandable because people are talking about enlightenment. They're probably connected to their own suffering. That is the motivation for so many of us to get on this path. I myself, though, have really walked away effectively from some notion of a final arrival, some destination. And so you may know that, again, just to pick on the Dalai Lama, as I understand it, he gets up at 4 a.m. every day for about 4 hours of practice. Doubt he's watching much Netflix, so he's not binging past midnight, some of us. But what does that tell us? There's always some cultivation to do. And the Dalai Lama is a very humble person, but he's also recognized as a world spiritual leader. So if he's still doing this, he's trying not to say, phew, I nailed that one, I can be done practice. So take another one. Ian, you mentioned non-meditation, which is actually in some traditions the ultimate meditation practice, which is absolutely doing nothing. In Zen Buddhism, it's just called shikantaza, just sitting. So you're not trying to get anything. It's a state or a practice of complete openness, and that includes openness to all manner of unpleasant things. So what do we do with unpleasant things? Biologically, this imperative: push it away. It's dangerous. It could kill me. This could prevent me from advancing my genes into the next generation. We are attracted to the pleasant biologically. So go for that. There's lots of calories in there, and I can live to another day. So this repulsion attraction thing is very understandable, and it can easily become kind of a battle in meditation. But when we, as human beings with these mental faculties that most other species seem to lack, I would say most, we have the capacity to develop on another plane, essentially. So I don't think, my goal is certainly not to come to a time when meditation is no longer necessary. What you might have been getting at is getting to the place where the sitting on the cushion and moving about your day is not a stark line of division. Is that what you're sort of implying a moment ago? Because if I'm carrying that quality of awareness off the cushion, then the practice is working. And because we're all conditioned human beings, a great comment from Suzuki Roshi, a Zen master of the 20th century, said to his students, "You are all perfect just as you are, and you could still use a little work." And what that speaks to is the absolute dimension of we are here in imperfection. A moment of clarity is not other than enlightenment. And then if you start yelling at your kid, okay, that's where your work can do. You can proceed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I resonate a lot with your response and my own personal and Derrick, I mean, and everyone listening to this who's listened to previous ones, this will be old news, but I feel like I most of the time I'm walking that path of, okay, like things are what they are and like I'm not attached, and then I get in the car and I start driving and man, I've got a lot of opinions and attachments of how other people should drive. And it's, I hear Ram Dass, you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. For me, it's getting in the car. I can handle my family. Driving in the car and my expectations of others, man, that one still gets me. But so that's for me, that reminder of like, okay, there's still work to be done. But this is where you, like you were saying, that moment of clarity is the nirvana. That is the enlightenment. And how many times can you reach that? How long can you stay in that before you fall off? And then you fall and you just get right back in it. And the path is the path, right? And you walking it is it. Right. And so I love that. And then the other thing that came to my mind was you were saying that we're one of the few species who has this. And I was like, well, I don't know. What about maybe that's why lions sleep 18 hours a day, because they're just at peace. They know it's fine. Yeah. I don't need to spend all day working or trying to do things. I'll just wait and the food will come to me or it won't. And I'll just nap and enjoy life for as long as I have it, because it can be gone in an instant. And, maybe more species than we think have this level of non-attachment. And that's why they move, like cats, for instance. My cats, my personal cats, they're very enlightened, I think.
They're the most natural yogis of all. If we could only do their stretches, yeah. Well, Ian, I love your example of driving because I'm right there with you. I'm sorry to say, my wife will vouch for this. I'm sort of triggered by crazy, erratic drivers. And that's a practice. I absolutely know that. And I can say more progress needs to happen. More work to do, Doug.
Maybe we could start a group.
A support group.
Accountability support group for activated drivers.
I just think there's so much to this notion of, you used the word nirvana, and I think samsara was in there. And one of the deeper Buddhist philosophers said there's actually samsara is not other than nirvana.
Right.
Nirvana is not other than samsara. And that is really a perfection of a non-dual understanding. Nowhere else to go, which is not to say there aren't other realms. I am really tuning in, with the help of medicines, to that we are these biological organisms living in time-space. But time-space is another construct, and that's an incredibly deep well to dive into. But to say, there's an enormous amount of which we're not aware. I've just only got 5 senses and a mind, and the mind is the one that's most available for expansion. So that's what we're opening up. And if some mystic or saint has had visions of other beings, I've had some intimation of other non-embodied beings. I don't want to go too far down that track because I just feel very newly introduced to it. But I have a deep respect for, and I hope a growing appreciation for what I don't know. And don't see, perceive, etc.
Sure. Yeah. Time space is an illusion created by our 5 senses. Right.
Well said.
I'm always reminded of this, if you only see 7 colors, then you're blind. And if you only hear 7 tones, then you're deaf. Like there is so much more to this experience. And we know that even through science, that there are, spectrums of light that we just can't perceive with our very, very limited sensory, perceptions. And I'm glad you brought that up, and I love that reminder that there's so much more than to what our senses present to us as what is happening.
Right. It's a pretty useful thing, this biological form, but let's not fool ourselves. I mean, other species with different capacities have a completely different experience of reality. And again, science can be a tremendous tool and assist on this. But I think we could also probably agree that scientific materialism, just to say matter, this is all there is, that's a point of view that I think can be easily challenged.
Yeah, it always makes me, I get a nice kick out of it whenever like ancient philosophy, like our modern science catches up to many thousand years ago philosophy of there is no reality without the observer. Like they've known that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that it doesn't exist unless you're observing it. And then science is like, oh yeah, actually particles are all sorts of, just doing all sorts of things until you're observing it. And then it's structured. It's like, wow, way to catch up, guys. Good job with your fancy
Good job, yeah.
instruments.
Yeah, quantum theory, what a thing. I wish I had the kind of mind that had a deeper grasp of it. But I can kind of flirt with it and say, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Like you said, the mind's the easiest one to expand of the senses. I like that, the 5 senses in the mind. And you can do other practices, Vipassana, body scanning. When I did a Vipassana retreat, I felt like I could sense my body at a much different level than I've ever have before. And that's a skill I could practice or not. But you're so right for where most of us are. We're societally, or just because of the weight of our past, we're gonna reach some limits on our sensory perception that we're just not going to challenge much. We're not going to be, seeing if we can move our hand through tables and stuff. And, what's these deeper levels? We're going to hit some boundaries. But the mind and different frameworks are normally the ones that we can move around a bit more and that can open up those senses more, really with openness, with that curiosity. And curiosity is the fundamental, I'd say, tool of the work that Ian and I do with helping the herd. And I think it's true of life. Curiosity is what keeps you growing and expanding. And if you're not growing, you're probably stagnating or declining. So I really like that. Like, the mind is a terrible thing to waste too.
And also, just to say, I have a deep respect for somatic and body-based meditations and disciplines, because the body is inevitably in the here and now, which is something we can't say for our neurotic minds. So so often, as you both know, meditation is so often best started with dropping into the body. It's not all there is, but what a great starting point. And anyway, from a quantum perspective, there's no out there. There's nothing out there. It's all, all of our experience is sort of what we recognize and perceive through our 6 faculties. So, and at the same time, I don't want to diminish in any way the importance of engagement, the relative world. We're in relationship, we're interacting, we're interdependent.
If anything, all the more reason to be mindful of what you're experiencing. What are you consuming? What are you taking in? Because it's going to form your reality. And, slowing down, coming into presence, and being very curious, coming back to that word again too. Don't take for granted what it is that you're seeing. Another thing in that book that really stood out to me was talking about how children, before they're taught, this is a tree, this is a book, this is a car, there's so much there's so many things happening, and I'm not sure what all these things are, and I'm really taking everything in, and there's so much to experience. And then flash forward 10 years, maybe less, you may be driving down the road and you're just like, yeah, I know all those things on the side of the road. I can, trees, bushes, signs, whatever. I'm not even focused on it because I already know what it is. So what more is there to discover? But there is so much to discover if we let go of the labels and what we think we know about all the things that we're perceiving.
Neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. How can we get some of that back?
I don't know. Mindfulness practice.
Yeah. And as my mentor said, we need all the help we can get, was even though he's a Zen Buddhist scholar, he also enjoys those medicines because of the assist. Mm-hmm. I would say they're not primary. I know our time is limited, but Derrick, I wanted to just come back to something you and I had prepped before. Mm-hmm. Back to your communications, your relationships, and so forth, which is this concept called rupture and repair. And since I can seize the mic for a moment, I just want to acknowledge, because we're familiar with conflict, all relationships will run into a fence or wall over time. And I like to think of them as relationships being stress tested. And and I have such recent experience of this and going way back in time. So the rupture part is like, ooh, we are really butting heads. I mean, wow, this is really, really tough. I'm not sure this is where this is going to go. And the relationships that have been ruptured and not repaired remain as pain points for me, and probably for a lot of us, whether of any kind of relationships. And so a few things just to say about that. One is that sometimes a relationship needs to end. It's just run its course. There was maybe had a place over a period of time, and then there's no one that's served, or you just referring to oneself. It's not serving me to continue this relationship. I have experience of letting go of relationships skillfully and letting go really unskillfully. And the ones where I've kind of done damage is I left the door and went through the doorway and slammed it, leave a kind of a mental imprint or scar. And that is something I've learned from painful experience. I really hope not to be doing much more of that. On the happier side, I have had the experience of unexpected repair. Then relationships that I thought were done. Even the best man at my wedding 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. He and I would say we just were still kind of emotionally young in certain ways. And a few years later, we were just boom. And I thought, okay, I just will never see this guy. And then I was at a piano concert performed by some friends, and I said, oh, I wonder if he'll be there. And sure enough, he was. Hadn't seen him in decades. Our eyes met, and it was so warm. I approached him. He extended his hand to me. I batted it away, and we had this hug. And it was magic and grace. It was unearned. And we have really enjoyed the resumption of friendship. Sometimes that was almost effortless. That was like a flower opening. Other times it takes work. And I think going back to, the beginning of this conversation, if there's real listening and a real desire to mend, and that doesn't mean necessarily agreeing with everything. So I just think this rupture and repair concept has been powerful for me lately. And I desire, since I'm, I don't have, I don't know how many years I have left, but I'm clearly at the later stages of the life. I like to minimize my unfinished business. I cannot repair certain relationships. I have a couple that I may just end this life and we just couldn't go any further. And that's maybe just painful but true. Other ones I say, wow, is there anything I can do to heal this? And to have accountability on my part, to apologize and say, I am sorry for any pain or harm I have caused you. And if my heart's really open, I can say, and I forgive you for the pain and harm you've caused me. So that it's a thing of great beauty. So take it when you can get it. But I've just opened that up, and I wanted to invite any reflections from either of you on that, because it's such an important theme for me these days.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks so much. I was going to segue over here soon because I wanted to make sure we hit this, because such an important topic. I've recently had various ruptures in different relationships. Like you said, they're pain points. I think of them as weight. They're just weight that I'm carrying on my heart that is just, oof, like who wants to carry around all that weight? It slows you down. It keeps you from opening in other areas. I think of it as weight, and I also think of it as contraction, almost like scar tissue around, like a wound. If that wound isn't healed properly, nurtured, it can just scar and contract, and then you have a lot harder time opening or exercising those same muscles in the future because there's scars on it, because there's this weight that's just still weighing it down. So yeah, I think what could be more skillful than intentionally looking at rupture and how to rupture better, how to, when things do rupture, whenever there is a disconnect, and how to leave, more room for repair. And then how does one go about this process of repair? I feel like I'm just stumbling around in the dark a lot of the times and looking for grace or inspiration. And maybe it's after a long meditation or, a vacation or a retreat or something, and you have a moment of clarity and you reach out and things start to work. And it can be magic, it can be grace. But yeah, no, Ian, I would really like to hear from you on this. Doug, further reflections. Like, how do we rupture better? I think is a decent place to start when things are going. How do we, not burn the bridges behind us? And how do we go about repair?
Ian, come on, say
Sure.
something.
All right. I've been quiet for too long. Yeah, I mean, before I answer your question, Derrick, I wanted to respond to Doug's share around relationships ending, and sometimes relationships need to end. I just want to speak just a short little thing I had written down about that before I answer your question. But I agree completely, Doug. Some relationships do need to end, and oftentimes forcing a relationship will cause far more pain and grief than it would have caused, than you would have experienced if you had just let it go.
Right.
And one practice that I have found to be very beneficial, and I found this from a podcast that I had listened to that somebody referred to me, but having a conversation and an understanding of what is the purpose of the relationship. Why are we in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's romantic? What are we doing here? Why do we have this? And for me, the ultimate reason why I find is to support each other's highest good. And that could mean that the highest good for that other person at some point doesn't include me. Maybe they need to outgrow this specific relationship for their highest good, and that's just another practice for non-attachment, right? Not this idea in our culture of forever. We'll be together forever. It's not possible. It's impossible to be together forever. That will not happen. Everything is temporary. One of you is going to die before the other, and at best case scenario, and you're still going to be without that person, right? And so accepting that this isn't going to be forever, and having that in you as you move through that relationship, I just take some of that burden and pressure and weight off of, we have to do this forever. We got to make this work. Maybe you don't. Maybe the purpose of that relationship is to help each other for this amount of time, and you have this tremendous growth, and then you do something else, right? It isn't always, not every relationship is meant to be for the rest of this lifetime, right? And that can allow some peace and some, again, just another practice of non-attachment.
There's a little fairy tale I will break in, very short. This couple in just absolute love on an island, and they're just enraptured with each other, completely involved. And he goes up, climbs up the hill, and just says a prayer. I just really, really want what's best for her. And just such an openness of heart. And he looks down and he sees her sailing off with another guy. His wish came true.
Yeah. Poignant, painful. I'll jump into to throw off your throw in, but while you were speaking, wow. I was hit with a real deep appreciation for the time we have with people. I guess it's normal, I'm judging myself for it, forget based on our conversation earlier, but it's like super normal to fall into this myth of permanence and to act in total insanity every day, as if these things are granted and they're just like, I deserve all these, this is my privilege, I'll always have these cats, my loving partner, my grandmother, whoever it is, and we just act like it is a given. And as soon as you're just hearing that, I was, you call it dissociating almost, recognizing that as I'm, accepting, oh yeah, no, I know that's true, all things end, and just how heartbroken I would be if I lost, any of these people. If I lost Courtney today, what I would do. And it just, you could wallow in that, or what I'm trying to, you go with the flow of it. Be so damn grateful every single day. Again, the grief and the gratitude, and be stretched large. And how much love could I show this person today? I don't have another day. So I just wanted to share that where my heart and my mind were going during that, because it is so incredibly powerful and so incredibly hard.
Absolutely. And it brings us full circle. I mean, Doug mentioned that earlier, of just this will end. Life will end. And when it that gives you the you can choose. There's basically two choices. You can wallow and be like, well, it's going to end, but I don't want it to end, so I'm going to do everything I can to prolong that and avoid it. Or you can, take the approach of being just so grateful and appreciative of each moment that you have, and really cherishing those moments and applying that to relationships. It will end at some point. Your relationship will end, if not by death, by something else. And so cherishing each precious moment that you have with that person in this incarnation is really, for me, like the highest practice, and the best way to really get the most out of your time with that person, and enrich it with love and gratitude, which are very high vibrations to enrich a relationship in. So love when things come full circle. And then, so to answer your question, Derrick, about rupture and repair, my practice is, let me just tap in real quick before I just answer that. We're shifting gears here. I think one of the really important methods of rupture and repair is accepting what is. Accepting that, yes, there was a rupture. Yes, this thing happened. But not casting blame or judgment or all these things that maybe absolve us for any part that we may have played in it, and acknowledging that we together created this and we together can move through it. If, again, coming back full circle, if we really hear each other and acknowledge the other person's experience, and not take a defensive approach of, well, it wasn't my fault, or, this or whatever. Accept that, you did co-create this thing together, and you can co-create your way out of it through hearing each other and really honoring each person's experience as they experienced it. I think that's a really important piece. I don't like to get hung up on the apologies, but acknowledge the part that you played in the co-creation of the experience, and holding space for what you co-created for that other person and how they experienced that. Just hear it and acknowledge it. I think that oftentimes is the biggest thing that you can do to move through uncomfortable or undesirable experiences that you had with someone, whether it's rupture or damage or pain or whatever was caused. Hold space for the other person's experience. I think it's one of the biggest things you can do to help that repair, help them feel seen and heard in what happened for them.
Right. That's at the bottom of, really, I think forgiveness and apology can be a little sticky for people. It can be forced. It can feel phony. And I think what you're speaking to is the more authentic understructure of that. And owning one's part in the dynamic, and not easy to do always. Because that forces a confrontation with your own shadow material, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate your clarification on that.
Absolutely, and I agree with 100% with what you're saying about how apologies and forgiveness and these things can be very loaded. Especially, I don't know about you when you were children, you guys, but for me, I was forced to apologize at times. I was forced, say sorry for doing this, or and it kind of really complicated my relationship with that process of, I did something or said something and it had an outcome. There was an effect because of it, and being forced to take responsibility for someone else's experience, that really complicates that relationship with cause and effect, and my co-creating, experiences for others.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Say it without meaning it. Yeah. Because you have to. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I'm hearing with the rupture, just accepting what's happening without judgment. Not an easy not an easy thing at all. You know, I'm filtering through my ruptures that, you know, are on my heart still. I'm like, yep, nope. There was a lot of judgment there, and I was right. Damn it, you know, and they deserve, you know.
Yeah, right
that.
and wrong is definitely a big part of that too. Who was right, who was wrong? That really, it makes it far stickier than it needs to be. Accepting what is. No one was right. No one was wrong. It is, and then let's move from there, or it was.
And a simplified, a simplifying thing here is a commitment to non-harming. In the Hindu traditions, ahimsa, non-harming, and it sounds like that's so basic as part of the perennial wisdom. That is transcultural. That is, you know, and so that simplifies things in the way of like I'm not. It's not you're a bad person or the right and wrong thing. Hey, Ian, did I just step on your foot? Wow. And then I can have empathy for you because who wants to have their foot stepped on?
Right. And also this is a great path to go down. So the do no harm, I love that, and I agree with that, and that is a meditation, a mantra that I have is, you know, may each action of mine benefit all living creatures, right? All sentient living beings, and also that bumps up against this concept of domain, in that other people have a right to perceive their reality in the way that they choose to perceive their reality. And so my intention of having done no harm may not have been received harmless by someone who is choosing to perceive me as doing harm to them. And that is their choice and that is their right. And they are fully allowed and entitled to perceive their reality through the lens that they choose to. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, Doug. How do you perceive that balance? How do you walk that tightrope of I'm intentionally doing no harm, and also it is okay for others to perceive me as having harmed them because they're choosing to perceive it that way?
I have a really hilarious little vignette.
Perfect.
I
knew you would.
I was swimming in the lane some months ago, and I was on the paddleboard. I was doing a dolphin kick, which is a little splashier. Got to the end of the lane, and this guy was outraged in a pool that I'd splashed him. Outraged. And God, I'm sorry I got you wet. I was sort of dumbfounded. I just like, what the hell? And so, okay, well then I just started backstroking, which is a lot less splashy. And he made a point of shoveling water onto my face as he went by me. And it was just so weird and hilarious that there was obviously no intention on my part. And I make a joke all the time to people, hey, you know, you can get wet in there. Dumb joke, but, you know, I use it. And what a moment. And he had his perception. He had his template, which is probably a little rageful. And I really just had to laugh. It was just goofy. Now, that was me clearly pretty innocent. Other times, I think this is the one is where it's trickier. Hey, I didn't mean to harm you. But that gets to a really interesting distinction between intention and impact.
Sure.
So
yeah.
as an older white dude, I've had to learn over time how to be more sensitive to people who aren't like me, that I could absolutely, without intention, give offense. I mean, just look back on the TV show Mad Men about how men treated women. It was just part of it, man. It is part of that culture in that era. And it was even normal. But over time, we've come to see that there is this, even though they may not even meant harm, even though in retrospect it looks kind of dumb, absolutely real harm was being done. So how do we come clean with that and grow up around it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Derrick, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a few. Intention versus impact always comes back, and you know, going back to the basics of feeling hurt, like if we can have the presence of mind, presence again, you know, being present, non-attached. If we can have the presence of mind to allow someone to be heard first and foremost. If you step on someone's foot and they're, ow, you hurt me. How often do you get the opposite? How often do you hear, I didn't mean to. Before someone's hurt, if we could start with I'm so sorry. Ow.
Yeah.
Oh no. You know, do you need anything? You know, let it cool down a little bit. Then, I'm sorry about that. That was not my intention. You can make that clear. But how often do we get defensive first because we don't want to hurt someone and we don't want to take responsibility for our actions, whether, they were right or wrong. So I love the clarity of this, listening to people. And then I just keep going back because I'm really trying to learn this. I really want to get this down. I really like the ahimsa and acceptance being this place to start with Rupture. If I can accept what's going on, a master skill, but sure. But then also if I can not make it worse, if I can not, burn the bridge even more, throw some extra wounds onto it as the wound's happening. How great of a skill is it to just not make something worse? You hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you, so you're going to hurt me. Now these scars are going to layer on top. And now this gets to the second part of my question, how do we, repair? But let's start by not making the repair harder than it is. If your dishwasher breaks, you don't pour a bunch of concrete in it and let it sit there for a bit and then call the repair guy. That's not very skillful. That's not very skillful. So can we do that in our relationships? Oh no, I really like that. My thoughts, and I'm curious about the repair part. Then if it's not too contrived. I heard a lot, Doug, on your first talks about grace. Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes things need to end, so there is no repair. Maybe you are going to go to the grave with that and acceptance of that. That's great. But whenever there is, repair possible, let's say, we use Ian's question of, what's the purpose of this relationship?
Yeah, I like
and that. We've decided there is still a purpose there, whatever it is. Another clarifying question: how do we go about repair?
Yeah. Well, humility, and the spiritual leaders I admire most have that with abundance. Spiritual pride is you can have some pretty powerful experiences along the way, and boy, if you start saying that is me, get puffed up about that. So that's just that's the first bad misstep. And unfortunately, there are a lot of not so good examples, even among very well-known spiritual teachers, of just pride that just interferes with the rest of the teaching. So this doesn't come easy to me. And in the course of a day, I could get wrong-footed with my wife, and I will not claim to always being ready to say, blew it, sorry. Mm-hmm. And then there's the piece about it's back to your thing about the forced apology, Ian. It's got to feel fair, Well, mommy, brother Johnny, he got more root beer than me, so I'm mad about it. That's not fair. I'm more or less at that level at the 6-year-old. I got the 6-year-old alive well in me. So I think there's a fairness thing in there too. Mm-hmm. Not to digress, but it's just hard work, I think, to have that kind of humility to say that we're all bozos on this bus, and I'm in the front seat.
Mm-hmm. It's a healthy place to start. It's a very healthy place to start. That's a good point. Yeah, if you're not coming in open, what are the chances of good repair? If you're looking for them to say this exact string of words that will be the spell that frees your heart from this, hardening. Good luck. Yeah. Good luck with that magic. Yeah.
And just to say, another whole thing, and I think our time is running short, but to cop to how rage can also be very infectious. If somebody drives by you, Ian, when you're behind the wheel and they flip you off after cutting you off, it's very infectious. If they're aggressive towards you, I'll just say me. It's the easiest thing to do, slip into an aggressive reaction. And so I just consider that one to be, and look at the political environment right now, without going into details. There's a lot of rage happening. A lot of rage. And I just feel that is a tar pit. And we know what happens to animals stuck in a tar pit. They become fossils, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And on that people flipping you off analogy, it brings me back to you're talking about in the swimming pool, that person who is so upset about water being splashed on them. And that brings me to the 4 agreements, which are very, very important tenets in what I teach to my clients and what I live by every day, which is, in this specific one, not taking things personally, right? And that person in that lane absolutely took that splashing personally and then chose to, project their perceived attack and put it back to you. Well, you splashed me. Well, I'm going to splash you back because you clearly wanted to splash me. So how do you like it? How does it feel when you do this thing? Because you did this to me. Right. Similarly, with the driving situation, my favorite is when somebody's driving slower than I want to drive, right? I almost said just slower than I wanted to drive. Maybe for them it's not slow. So I go around them and then they flip me off for wanting to get where I want to go more quickly than them. I haven't cut them off or anything. I'm just trying to get around them and get to my destination at the speed that I would like to get to it. And they're so upset about it that they do a physical, a nonverbal communication of like confrontation, like essentially like F you, like, whoa, like how escalating this thing, because they're taking it personally the way that I'm driving my vehicle. And so for me, when that happens, it's that one isn't hard for me because it's just like, okay, that's clearly not about me. I haven't done anything here. I'm just driving my vehicle in the way that I want to drive it. And so I'm able to not take that one personally. And so that's kind of a helpful mantra for me, is just let me check through those four agreements. Am I being impeccable with my word? Am I taking things personally? Am I making an assumption, or am I doing my best? As long as I can check all those things, check those 4 boxes, for me, it's a really nice kind of like a heading, helps me find my true north, if you will, of like, okay, I'm on my path. I'm doing what I need to be doing. And this isn't about me,
So say those 4 things a little more slowly. I want to implant them.
Absolutely. So the first agreement is be impeccable with your words. Say what you mean and mean what you say. The second is don't take things personally. The third is don't make assumptions. For me, I like to modify that because this specific agreement is very similar to the idea of like ego death, where we're going to kill the ego. That's not possible. You're not going to rid yourself of ego any more than you're going to stop your mind from making assumptions. The mind makes assumptions. It is assuming all sorts of things all of the time. But with this specific agreement, it's more about don't make decisions or choices based on an assumption, right? Get all of the information before you do something based on this assumption. Or don't, guessing is a similar way too. Don't guess what someone means or what someone's thinking. Find out, over communicate, ask the question, get the clarity before you do something. And then the fourth is do your best. And always do your best, actually, to be impeccable. Always do your best. And one of the main takeaways there is that no one gets to decide your best besides you. Yeah. No one gets to determine Doug's best any more than they get to determine Derrick's best or my best. We determine that. And that gets us into people pleasing and all sorts of different other, harmful patterns and habits that we have. But those are the 4 tenets that I start every single client that I work with. We go through that book and we talk about those 4 agreements together, as I think they're very important, pillars upon which to build a foundation of healthy communication with our own self as well as with others.
All right. I would just say in parting that what a beautiful example of a practice. I don't think, Ian, you're implying that there's any point where you're saying, okay, I nailed it, I've arrived, we're done. I know all these perfectly well. Jobs, it's a wrap. And so what a beautiful practice you've just described.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Certainly do not claim to have arrived anywhere. I am still very much on the path and doing my best to stay on it.
Yeah, that's right. We're all living and dying and trying to do it as best we can. No, this has been really wonderful. It's so great getting to talk with you both. Yeah, I'll be mindful of time, and I just want to give a final call for any things, especially Doug, if you don't mind, a quick plug for Living Dying Project. I recommend this program to everyone that I think could, benefit from it. Could you speak a little bit to who might consider reaching out to the Living Dying Project or checking you out? Who might benefit from this community?
It is the Living Dying Project. It's a nonprofit founded by Dale Borglum who was a close associate of Ram Dass, and Stephen Levine, names that you may be more familiar with. And it's back in the 70s, actually, they first founded the first residential hospice in the country. And so currently the project is alive and well, and it is at www.livingdying.org. And anyone who we variously just offer general spiritual support for people who want that, connect through with Sangha on Zoom 2 times a month, generally talks given by Dale, occasionally by me. And those who are facing serious illness, those who are grieving a loss, and those like you were, going through the stresses of caregiving. We offer a one-on-one volunteer support as well as group support. Again, most of this is conducted on Zoom, so this is the silver lining of the COVID era when our reach got greatly expanded. And so it's truly a great delight of mine that I have a vocation in life that has nothing to do with making a living. It's about giving life. And so I encourage people to check out the website. We have guest speaker series, and it is a great joy to bring this for people who are compelled or just naturally curious into an investigation around their mortality.
Fantastic. Thank you. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Doug, you were such a support for me during a very difficult time, and then what I assume to be a lifelong friendship is come from it. It's what a beautiful thing,
It's sure looking that way, Derrick.
Sure,
and Ian, I want to say, pardon me?
No, you're not getting rid of me that easy, Doug. You're stuck with me
no,
for a while.
No, I'm not going to try. And Ian, I want to say just what a pleasure it's been to connect with you and kind of experience your inner life and how you've cultivated that and how you're expressing it in the world. So it's really a delight to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for being on here, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Hope to have you back again. Maybe communications outside of the podcast. I'd be very open to that and connecting in that way. I had a question. Would you prefer, for those who feel called to work with you or connect with you in some way, would you prefer they go through the Living Dying Project, or are you open to people reaching out to you directly? Like, what would be the best way for those that feel called to work with you in some capacity? How would you recommend they get in touch with you?
You can provide my email address. That's just perfectly fine. And also, I do like to be associated with the Living Dying Project, but it's not my whole life. And I do want to say that all the services offered by the Living Dying Project are free of charge. With the joy of not being commercialized.
Perfect.
So, and I don't have any fee structure either. So.
Okay, great. Well, we'll definitely include that in the description of the podcast. And any listeners who either have questions for us or have questions for Doug, there will also be a link in the description for where you can post those. And if they are questions for Doug, that would be a great opportunity for us to get him back on this podcast sooner than later, where we can answer those questions and have another rich conversation.
It would be a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for being here. I love this podcast. Thank you guys so much. Beautiful conversation. And thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Be well, everyone.
This has been the Do You Feel Heard podcast. If you're interested in resources that will help you move through conflict, you can go to doyoufeelheard.com, where we have tools for individuals and couples.